The air inside the research facility always felt wrong to him. Not dangerous, not toxic, just wrong in a way that made his instincts itch. The gravity was calibrated to human comfort, the temperature tuned to human skin, the lighting adjusted to human eyes, yet everything else screamed alien logic. Walls curved where they should have been straight. Corridors shifted direction in subtle arcs. Devices hummed with tones that felt more like thoughts than sounds. Every day he reminded himself that he was lucky to be here, working on a planet most humans would only ever see in documentaries or classified reports. And every day he also reminded himself not to touch anything unless he was absolutely certain he knew what it was. That last rule was the hardest. From the moment humans and aliens had begun sharing research facilities, cultural training sessions had become mandatory. He still remembered the instructor's voice, calm but deadly serious, repeating the same warning with increasing intensity. Alien tools were not just tools. They were symbols, rituals, and history condensed into metal and light. Some devices were meant for science. Others were meant for communication. And a few, very few, were meant for things humans were never supposed to interfere with. Unfortunately, most of them looked exactly the same. He stood in the central lab with a diagnostic tablet in his hand, staring at a cluster of alien instruments arranged around a crystalline core. The system had malfunctioned again. That wasn't unusual. Alien technology was brilliant but temperamental, and human engineers had become the unofficial translators between alien design and practical functionality. Around him, researchers moved silently, their movements fluid and precise, as if every step followed an invisible choreography. He tried not to stare, but his eyes kept drifting toward her. She was standing near the core, reviewing data projected in the air before her. Her posture was calm, composed, almost regal. The faint glow of the holographic interface reflected in her eyes, giving them an otherworldly depth. Where humans tended to fill silence with noise, she seemed to thrive in it. Her presence alone altered the atmosphere of the room, not through force, but through quiet certainty. He had worked beside her for weeks, yet he still felt as if he understood nothing about her. Aliens were supposed to be logical, disciplined, bound by tradition. Humans, on the other hand, were apparently known across the galaxy for improvisation, emotional volatility, and a dangerous habit of acting before thinking. He had once overheard an alien researcher describe humans as beautifully inefficient. He wasn't sure whether that was an insult or a compliment. A sharp vibration ran through the floor. The crystalline core flickered. Lights dimmed, then surged back with irregular pulses. Several alien researchers turned their heads in unison. She was already moving, stepping toward the core with effortless speed. System instability detected, the facility AI announced in a neutral tone. Great, he thought. Another day, another interspecies disaster waiting to happen. He rushed forward, fingers flying across his tablet. Diagnostics scrolled rapidly, lines of alien code mixing with human annotations. Something was wrong with the energy modulation array. If the fluctuations continued, the entire research wing would shut down, possibly triggering a cascade failure. The aliens around him remained calm, but he could sense the tension beneath their composure. She looked at him, her expression unreadable. He swallowed and nodded, trying to project confidence he didn't feel. Okay, he muttered under his breath, half to himself. Find the regulator. Stabilize the flow. Don't touch anything ceremonial. Easy. The problem was that the regulator wasn't where the schematics said it should be. He scanned the equipment around the core. Dozens of devices floated in subtle orbits, each emitting a faint glow. Some pulsed with rhythmic light, others remained dormant, their surfaces etched with patterns that looked less like circuits and more like language. He hesitated, trying to match the visual data with the technical diagrams on his tablet. The vibrations intensified. A warning symbol flashed across his screen. The AI's voice grew slightly less neutral. Critical threshold approaching. He felt sweat forming on his palms. Behind him, he sensed movement. She had stepped closer, her gaze fixed not on the equipment, but on him. For a brief moment, he wondered what she saw when she looked at humans. Did she see chaos? Courage? Or just noise? Just pick something, he whispered. He reached out. His fingers closed around a slender, luminous object hovering near the core. It was warm to the touch, its surface smooth and strangely responsive, as if it recognized his presence. For a fraction of a second, he felt a surge of relief. This must be it. The regulator. The simple solution to a complicated problem. He activated it. The vibrations stopped instantly. The lights stabilized. The core's glow settled into a steady rhythm. For one glorious moment, he felt like a hero. Then the room went completely silent. He looked up. Every alien in the lab had stopped moving. Dozens of eyes were fixed on him. She stood directly in front of him now, no longer reviewing data, no longer calm in the way she had been moments before. Her expression had changed, not to anger, not to fear, but to something far more unsettling. Shock. Slowly, almost mechanically, she looked at the object in his hand. Then she looked back at him. Her pupils widened slightly. He felt the weight of the silence pressing down on him, heavy and suffocating. He said weakly. The translation system hesitated, as if unsure how to interpret his sound. She took a single step closer. The glow of the device in his hand intensified, responding to proximity in ways he definitely did not understand. Strange symbols began to appear across its surface, shifting and rearranging themselves like living script. He had a sudden, terrible realization. This was not a regulator. This was not a tool meant for repairs. This was something else. He remembered the instructor's voice again, echoing in his mind with brutal clarity. Some devices are not meant for science. Some are not meant for communication. And some should never be touched by humans. She spoke softly in her language, her voice low but resonant. The translation system processed her words with unusual delay. Around them, other aliens began murmuring, their voices overlapping in patterns that sounded less like conversation and more like ritual. He opened his mouth to apologize. But before he could say anything, she lifted her hand, not toward the device, but toward him. Her gaze did not hold anger. It held something far more dangerous. Respect. And somewhere beneath it, something that looked suspiciously like pride. He stood frozen, still holding the glowing object, suddenly aware that whatever he had just done was not a minor technical mistake. It was a cultural event. And judging by the way she was looking at him, it was only the beginning. For a few seconds after the silence fell, he honestly believed the translation system had broken. That would have been comforting. Instead, the device in his hand continued to glow, its surface now covered in shifting patterns that felt far too deliberate to be random. The symbols pulsed slowly, like a heartbeat. He tried to loosen his grip, but the object responded to his movement, brightening as if it were pleased. That thought alone made his stomach twist. Around him, the alien researchers began speaking in low, controlled voices. Their language flowed in layered tones that the translation system struggled to process. Fragments of meaning appeared on his tablet, incomplete and confusing. Recognition. Intention. Unprecedented. He looked at her again. She had not moved, but the air between them felt different now. Her posture was no longer purely professional. There was a subtle tension in her shoulders, as if she were balancing between duty and something far more personal. When she spoke again, her voice was quieter, but every alien in the room seemed to hear it clearly. The translation system finally caught up. "You have acted," it rendered carefully, "with unusual courage." He blinked. Courage? The word felt absurd in his mouth. He had not been courageous. He had been confused, stressed, and seconds away from causing a system failure that would probably have ended his career. I just grabbed the nearest device," he said quickly. "It was an accident. I didn't know what it was. I mean, everything here looks the same to us, and the schematics were wrong, and the AI was yelling, and..." As he spoke, the translation system began converting his frantic explanation into alien language. He watched the translated output on his tablet, and felt his soul leave his body. Where he had said, accident, the system rendered something closer to instinctual choice. Where he had said, panic, it translated to emotional urgency. Where he had said, I didn't know what it was, it became, I did not allow uncertainty to stop me. The alien researchers around him reacted with subtle but unmistakable shifts in posture. She listened without interrupting him, her gaze steady. When he finished rambling, the room was quiet again. You misunderstand, she said. The translation was clear this time. That instrument is not used in maintenance, she continued. It is not used in diagnostics. It is not used in emergencies. He swallowed. Then what is it used for? For the first time since he had met her, she hesitated. The pause was brief, but it felt enormous. It is used, she said slowly, when one individual chooses to acknowledge a bond. The word bond appeared on his screen with several annotations and cultural footnotes, none of which made him feel better. He stared at her, his mind racing. A bond like teamwork? Cooperation? Interdisciplinary collaboration? A few alien researchers tilted their heads, clearly intrigued by his interpretation. The translation system did not help him. His words emerged in alien language as something closer to, I am seeking a definition of the connection I have initiated. He wanted to die. She studied him with an intensity that made his skin prickle. In our culture, she said, such an action is never performed lightly. It signifies willingness to stand beside another, even without full understanding of consequences. He opened his mouth to protest again, but she stepped closer. The distance between them was suddenly much smaller than it had ever been before. You could have chosen any other device, she continued. You could have stepped back. You could have waited for clarification. Instead, you acted. He tried to laugh, but it came out wrong. Trust me, I wasn't trying to make a philosophical statement. I was trying not to blow up your lab. Her eyes softened slightly at that. Around them, the murmurs grew louder. Then something happened that he had not anticipated at all. She turned away from him. Not in rejection. In decision. She faced the other aliens in the lab and spoke in a firm, resonant tone. Her words carried authority, and the room responded instantly. Conversation stopped. Movements froze. The translation system rendered her statement with formal precision. He has acted according to our most ancient gesture. It translated. Therefore, he must be acknowledged. Before he could ask what acknowledged meant, two alien researchers stepped forward and began projecting holographic symbols into the air. The symbols formed patterns he had never seen before, interlocking in complex geometries. She turned back to him. Her expression was no longer shocked. It was proud. You will accompany me, she said. He blinked. Accompany you where? To my clan. The word clan appeared on his screen with additional notes that made his head spin. Wait, he said, his voice rising. We should probably slow down. I'm just a technician. I'm not authorized for diplomatic engagements. I don't even have the right clearance to attend alien social functions. Last time I tried, I almost got banned from the cafeteria. The translation system betrayed him again. His words emerged as something far more dramatic. I am not prepared for the magnitude of what I have begun. Several aliens reacted with visible interest. She studied him with what looked suspiciously like admiration. You do not need to be prepared, she said gently. You only need to be honest. Honest. The word hit him harder than any technical problem ever had. He had come to this planet to fix machines, not emotions. As the holographic symbol stabilized, a message appeared on his tablet, overriding his diagnostic interface. It was not a technical notification. It was a cultural announcement. Status: initiated bond recognition. Participants: human technician/alien researcher. Witnesses: active. Clan notification: pending. His hands trembled slightly as he read it. He looked up at her. She was no longer just a colleague standing across a laboratory bench. She was someone who believed he had made a deliberate choice. Someone who believed he had stepped into her world with intention. He wanted to tell her the truth again. But as he opened his mouth, he realized something that scared him even more than the misunderstanding. For the first time since arriving on this alien planet, he wasn't entirely sure he wanted to undo it. From that moment on, nothing in the lab felt normal. He tried to return to his work, to pretend that the glowing device was nothing more than a malfunctioning piece of alien engineering, but every glance she cast in his direction reminded him that the world had shifted. Other humans scurried past, muttering about weird alien bonding rituals and human casualties waiting to happen. But he barely noticed. The alien girl had made it clear. She expected him to stay, to participate, to, somehow, navigate a cultural ritual that he didn't understand and didn't even know how to pronounce. Every task he attempted was suddenly fraught with meaning. Adjusting the energy conduits, tightening the crystalline stabilizers, calibrating the plasma lenses, all mundane actions now carried symbolic weight. The more he tried to act naturally, the more elaborate the aliens interpreted his gestures. He spilled coolant once, and the nearest alien declared it a sacrificial offering of vulnerability, which earned him a polite bow from the elder researchers. He triple-checked every reading, only to be complimented for courageous foresight, when he followed protocol correctly. Nothing he did went unnoticed. And then there was her. She lingered nearby, always watching, sometimes offering advice, and sometimes simply smiling in a way that suggested she knew exactly how he felt, even when he didn't know himself. Her curiosity was relentless. "Why do humans frown when they are concentrating?" she asked one afternoon, leaning over his shoulder as he adjusted a delicate array of sensors. He nearly dropped a tool. It's something with the muscles, I guess," he stammered. The translation system transformed it into humans allow their facial expressions to convey the intensity of mental engagement. She nodded slowly, jotting something down on her tablet. Her next question was worse. "And why do humans speak nonsense when they are nervous?" He swallowed hard. "Nonsense?" The translation system betrayed him again. "Verbal expressions intended to fill silence during heightened stress." "Oh," she said simply, her tone calm, yet her eyes sparkled. "Fascinating." She tapped her tablet. "Your species is chaotic in a delightful way." Delightful. He nearly choked. Despite himself, he began to notice little things about her too. The subtle way she tilted her head when she was thinking. The way her fingers danced over the holographic displays as if drawing music in the air. The small, almost imperceptible smile she gave when she caught him making a minor mistake. Every gesture made her seem less intimidating, less a representative of alien authority, and more a person, someone with quirks, opinions, and emotions he couldn't quite decode but desperately wanted to understand. The bonding rituals, or what he assumed were bonding rituals, continued. Every day, she included him in small tasks, each supposedly symbolic, in alien culture, and each of which turned into a comedy of errors on his part. At one point, he accidentally adjusted the lighting incorrectly, causing the holographic symbols in the room to flicker and form a pattern resembling a galaxy spinning in reverse. The other aliens gasped in awe, interpreting it as a creative reinterpretation of ancient tradition. She laughed softly, not at him, exactly, but at the situation, and it was the kind of laugh that made him feel like he was being pulled into a world he had no right to belong to, yet couldn't resist entering. As the days passed, the lab became a stage for an unspoken game between them. He would fumble and stumble, she would guide and correct, and every interaction seemed to increase the tension. One afternoon, while calibrating the energy lenses, he accidentally brushed her hand. A normal human reaction might have been mild embarrassment, or a quick apology. Instead, she paused, held his gaze, and smiled knowingly. The translation system displayed. Human contact acknowledged. Intent unclear yet welcomed. He froze. Welcomed? That could not be good. But it wasn't awkward in the sense he expected. Instead, it was exhilarating. Suddenly, he was aware of every detail, the warmth of her presence, the faint hum of the instruments around them, the way light bounced off the crystalline structures and caught the shimmer in her eyes. He realized that the ritual, the mistake, the misunderstanding, all of it, had created a space where two completely different species could interact honestly, without pretense, without fear of judgment. And somehow, by accident, he had become an integral part of it. By the third week, the lab staff had started to treat him differently. The humans whispered behind his back about how bold he was, though he preferred hapless, and the aliens looked at him with a mixture of respect and curiosity. She encouraged it subtly, guiding him to take part in decision-making processes, offering her opinions in a way that suggested equality rather than hierarchy. And the more he worked with her, the more he realized that he didn't want to escape the misunderstanding that had brought them together. One evening, after hours of adjusting resonance stabilizers and reviewing fluctuation logs, he finally found a quiet moment to speak. "Look," he said, leaning back against the support beam. "I didn't mean to any of this. I grabbed the wrong tool, okay? I really did. If I could undo it, I would." She tilted her head, resting her chin on her hand. Her gaze was steady, unwavering. The translation system rendered her thoughts into a simple, clear line. Intentions, whether mistaken or deliberate, carry meaning only when acted upon. You acted. That is enough. He felt his chest tighten. Somehow, a human mistake had become a bridge between worlds, and the alien girl who had once seemed untouchable now regarded him with a mixture of amusement, admiration, and something else he couldn't name. Something like hope. The realization hit him fully as he left the lab that night. Nothing about this planet, this work, or this ritual made sense. But maybe that was the point. Humans thrived on unpredictability. They found value in mistakes, humor, and the messy paths that led to connection. And in this strange, glowing lab on an alien world, he had discovered something far more important than a fixed system or a stabilized core. He had discovered that even a single misstep could lead to something extraordinary, especially when it involved someone who refused to let him run from it. And for the first time in his life, he didn't want to. The air in the lab felt different now, charged with a quiet energy that wasn't there before. Every device hummed a little brighter, every holographic display seemed sharper, and even the crystalline core pulsed in steady, reassuring rhythm. He walked among the instruments with a strange confidence, the glowing tool in his hand now feeling less like a mistake and more like a symbol of the chaos that had changed everything. She followed him at a careful distance, her eyes tracking his every movement with an intensity that made him simultaneously nervous and exhilarated. For weeks, the misunderstanding had grown into something neither of them could ignore. The alien girl treated him with a mixture of pride and amusement, as if she had personally decided to adopt the human species as her project in emotional education. The other aliens had come to expect it, watching their interactions with fascination. Even the humans in the lab had stopped commenting on his blunders, though that might have been out of fear or sheer disbelief. Whatever the reason, he was no longer just a technician fumbling through repairs. He had become part of a story far larger than any malfunction he'd ever fixed. He paused beside the core, examining the instrument clusters. Normally, he would have been meticulous, double-checking every line of code and every energy reading. But tonight, he felt something different, a sense of ownership, not over the lab or the technology, but over the moment itself. The glow of the tool reflected off her face, and she tilted her head, smiling in a way that made him catch his breath. She stepped closer, closing the final few inches of space between them, and the air seemed to vibrate with an unspoken question. He took a deep breath, feeling the weight of the choice he had avoided for so long. He could step back, claim it had all been an accident, return to the safety of technical detachment. Or he could step forward, embrace the bond that had grown between them, and acknowledge that human mistakes sometimes had the power to create something extraordinary. He started, then stopped. Words seemed inadequate. He gestured toward the glowing tool. "I grabbed this by mistake," he admitted, letting the simple truth hang in the air. "But staying here with you, that's my choice. Every part of it." Her expression softened, her eyes brightening in a way that felt like a revelation. The translation system hummed as it rendered her response, carefully balancing literal meaning with cultural nuance. Intentional or not, you have acted. You have chosen. That is the truest measure of commitment. Commitment. The word felt heavy and light all at once. He realized that, for all the human's logic and all the alien's rituals, the universe still bent to the courage of choice, even when it came disguised as error. The glow from the tool intensified slightly, almost as if the instrument itself approved of his honesty. Around them, the lab seemed to respond, the holographic symbols shifting and intertwining in a dance that mirrored their emotions. He had never imagined that a single wrong tool could ripple outward and reshape culture, expectation, and connection all at once. Yet here they were, standing on the precipice of something entirely new. She reached out, placing her hand lightly on the instrument, then on his. The warmth of her touch was grounding, a tether to this alien world that suddenly felt like home. The other researchers observed silently, their curiosity tempered by respect. No one interrupted. It was a moment suspended in time, a culmination of mistakes, courage, and unspoken understanding. He laughed softly, a sound of relief and disbelief. "I can't believe this," he murmured. "One wrong tool, and suddenly I'm part of your clan's traditions. I didn't even know what I was doing." She smiled, a small, genuine smile that seemed to illuminate the entire lab. "Perhaps that is the point," she said. "Human actions are unpredictable, yet you have proven something most never do, that intention can exist even in the absence of complete understanding." The absurdity of it all struck him. A week ago, he would have considered himself a fool simply for being in this lab. Now, he was a participant in an interspecies ritual that had no clear rules, no precedent, and no possibility of failure, because failure, in this context, was merely another form of courage. As the lights of the core shimmered and the holographic pattern swirled, he realized the depth of what had happened. It wasn't just a mistake, or a misunderstanding. It was a bridge between worlds. A moment where human imperfection and alien precision intersected, creating something unpredictable and entirely beautiful. And standing beside him, the alien girl radiated an acceptance and admiration that made every blunder worth it. He set the glowing tool down gently, not because it was fragile, but because it had served its purpose. He looked at her, feeling a clarity he hadn't anticipated. "Then, I choose this," he said simply, gesturing between them. "I choose whatever this is. I'll see it through." Her hand remained in his, her gaze steady and unwavering. The translation system captured the simplicity and complexity of her response in equal measure. "And we shall walk this path together, human. Not by accident, but by choice." For the first time, he understood that mistakes could be transformative, that chaos could lead to connection, and that courage often appeared in the least likely of forms. The lab, the tools, the rituals, all of it faded into the background, leaving only the glow of understanding between them. And in that moment, he realized that humans were not merely technicians or observers in the galaxy. They were catalysts, unpredictable and emotional, capable of turning error into legend. And as he stood there, hand in hand with the alien girl who had refused to let him run from his own humanity, he knew that this story, the one born from one wrong tool, was just the beginning.